Hey, F you. Excuse me? ZZY, it's the Fuzzy Mike with Kevin Klein. The Fuzzy Mike Podcast.
Hi, and thanks for joining me. I don't know about you, but music has always been an integral part of my life. It helped make good times even better, got me through some bad times, and it led me to my 30-year career on the radio. I still know, to this day, what the first piece of recorded music I ever bought was. It was the 45 of Beth by Kiss. And if you didn't grow up in the era of records, you may not know what a 45 is. Well, you know how today we can download individual songs from an album and only pay for that one song? Well, a 45 was the exact same thing back in my youth, but we had to go to the store to buy it. It was a small record with the hit song on side A and another song on side B, thus the term B-side. And back in the day, we couldn't just download it since there weren't computers back then. Yes, I'm that old that I was born in BC, before computers. Now, today, in AD, after digital, we no longer have to go to the store to get new music. We can just download it from anywhere, as long as we have a capable OS or a digital device. My OS stands for old school, because I still buy CDs, since I like reading the liner notes, the lyrics, and having the album artwork. When I was young, the band Yes was the standard for badass album artwork. If you're listening to this on one of the streaming platforms, thank you. Thank you very, very much for doing that. But if you want to see what I'm talking about, you can watch this on the Fuzzy Mike YouTube channel, and there you're going to get the visuals of what I'm referencing. My personal album artwork progression went from Yes to Asia to Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction, the band one, and now to present day, Tool, Cannibal Corpse, Glitgore, and Torn the Fuck Apart. Those two are actual bands that I listen to. The more an album's artwork pushes the limits of decency, the more likely I am to buy it. And I'm not even kidding. If I'm on the fence about buying some band's music and they have a boring album cover, they're SOL. I ain't buying it. If they have a colorful album cover, I will give it more consideration. But if the album artwork is gross, crass, and even repugnant, especially repugnant, then I'm all in. Let me give an example, all right? I appreciate every type of music. I truly do. But that doesn't mean I'll listen to every type of music. What it does mean is that I won't say an artist sucks just because I don't have a predilection to their genre. Take, for example, Celine Dion. Great singer. Not my cup of tea. I've never purchased a Celine Dion song. Now, if there was a CD for her song, My Heart Will Go On, and the cover artwork was, say, a vibrant illustration of a guy kneeling over a bloody corpse, having just reached into its chest and plucked out the heart, and now he's holding the blood-dripping organ longingly as he draws it to his mouth to eat it, oh yeah, I'll buy that shit immediately. After hearing that and picturing it, do you think you'll ever listen to that song the same way again? I know. You don't have to say it. You're welcome. Anyway, back to the Beth 45 that I bought with my own money. My mom went to Kmart that night, said she was going to come back with it. I couldn't wait for her to get back home because she told me she was going to get it for me. When she got back home, I was waiting at the door. When she got inside, I tried to grab the bag. She wouldn't give it to me. She looked at me with a sorrowful look on her face and told me she couldn't find the one thing I asked her to bring home. My heart sank. She could tell I was disappointed, so she attempted to perk me up by informing me that while she couldn't find the song from Kiss, she was able to find something from Hug. Then she started laughing. Mom, always full of jokes. She gave me the Beth 45. I truly don't think my family saw me for like 3 days. I stayed in my room and played it over and over and over. Then my next music memory was visiting my grandparents. They lived in Dallas, Texas. We lived in St. Louis, Missouri. We'd make the drive every summer. My uncle is closer in age to me than he is to his sister, my mom. I think there's like an 8 or 9 year difference between he and I, and like a 13 or 14 year difference between he and my mom. I mean, they're both old. He's just not as. But on this particular pilgrimage, I got to tear into my Uncle Ron's albums in 8 tracks. An 8-track? Yeah, an 8-track. It was this diabolical cassette type thing. You couldn't rewind it. So if you wanted to hear your favorite song again after it played, you had to fast forward the entire cassette to get back to that one song. Oh, it was bullshit. The artists that I vividly remember, though, in my uncle's 8-track collection were the Eagles, Elton John, and Fleetwood Mac. His vinyl album collection had that one I distinctly remember, and I couldn't listen to it enough. It was AC/DC's Back in Black. I'm currently reading a book about drug addiction and how gateway drugs lead to harsher drugs to get the same effect once the body builds its tolerance. Kiss and AC/DC were my gateway drugs to Metallica, Pantera, and Cannibal Corpse today. Where I'm going with this is an introduction to my guest. He's worked with two of the bands I've mentioned, so I'll ask him to share stories about Kiss and Metallica, as well as other bands he's linked to, and we'll meet him in a moment. But first, I'll look at some headlines. Princess Diana's dress sold for over $1 million, setting a new world record. The late princess's 1985 ballerina-length evening dress with illustration, it sold for $1.148 million, setting a new world record for the most expensive Princess Diana dress ever sold. I mean, I get it. I mean, she was a celebrity, very popular figure worldwide, but $1.148 million for a dress? It's just a dress. There's no reason to lose your head over it.
You're a jerk. I know. 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 You're a jerk.
Colorado wildlife officials successfully released 5 gray wolves into the Rocky Mountains. Colorado Governor Jared Polis, who played an active role in the release, celebrated the news. Not celebrating the news? Other animals. And finally, a Senate staffer was caught filming a gay sex tape inside a Senate hearing room. This is not the first time a backdoor deal has taken place in the Senate, but it does mark the first time all year that two sides have come together there.
Dude, that's just wrong. Yeah. It's just wrong.
And now to my guest. He's had a nearly 3-decade career in radio and a storied career as a production assistant for Metallica, Kiss, Queensryche, Rod Stewart, and the Rolling Stones. Jave Patterson now works in the mental health industry and hosts his own podcast called Two Dudes Reviews, Dudes spelled D-O-O-D-S, where he gives his opinions on bourbons, among other things. And he joins me now.
What are you sipping on there?
I figured since we were probably going to be talking bourbon and whiskey, I'm doing a little Glenlivet Founders Reserve.
That's perfect.
They had locally here, they had a Christmas sale, so it was 50% off.
Yeah, I used to be I was a novice Scotch fan for a bit, and the best Scotch I ever had was Balvenie.
Uh-huh.
The 15-year double wood was spectacular. That was just a couple of drops of water in there. It turned into it had a finish almost like French toast. It was so delicious.
Wow.
But I have to say I'm more of a bourbon guy than a Scotch guy these days.
What are your go-to bourbons then?
Oh gosh, man, that's a great question. It was E.H. Taylor forever and a day. It was just my favorite, hands down bourbon to drink. That's back when you used to be able to find it in the $30 to $50 range.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, I heard rumors that it was going to become allocated, and about 3 years ago, it just kind of vanished from the shelves. I really love Stag Junior. Again, another one that is almost impossible to find nowadays. We used to be able to get it back on the West Coast around the holiday season. You know, the different liquor stores and grocery stores would get their allotment, and you could pick it up for about $50 a bottle for the Stag Junior. I really love that. It's a hot bourbon. You know, they typically clocked in at between 127 to 129 proof, and so one small snifter could take you feasibly through an entire Robusto cigar, you know?
That's Booker's type proof right there.
For sure, yeah. And I like the Booker's as well. To me, the Booker's doesn't finish quite as long as the Stag Junior and finishes a little on the bright side for me. I like more of a caramely, woody finish on a bourbon. Today, my go-to everyday drinker is simply Old Granddad. Here in the Carolinas, I can pick up a 175, a grip of Old Granddad for about $20, and I've done blind tasting with Old Granddad and the Weller Special Reserve, the green label, which
Wow.
again is tough to find.
Mm-hmm.
And it's difficult to notice a difference between those two bourbons. I know all the Buffalo Trace stuff is, sought after nowadays. The Eagle Rares
Oh,
and
yeah.
the Wellers and the Pappy Van Winkles, but by and large, it's a lot of hype. I was a Pappy collector for a bit, and I sold 5 bottles. I've got 1 bottle left.
Well, I wanted to talk to you about Pappy, and we'll get to that in a moment. But my go-to at home is Nelson Brothers.
Okay, I don't know. That I have
30
Nelson Brothers. I'm gonna.
Well, it used to be Bell Mead.
Okay. Okay.
And it's like $35 a bottle, and it's everything you're describing in what you like. It's got the caramel, it's got the toast, it's got it's a very nice finish. So yeah, Nelson Brothers, you'll find it all over the place.
Very cool. I'll have to look that one up the next time I'm hitting the store.
Are the Van Winkles worth it? Pappy, Rip Van.
Man, that's a great question. I
Because we're
finally
talking $2,000 a bottle.
Well, yeah, on the resale market. I mean, you look, I've got a bottle of Pappy 20 year. I bought for $168 about 7 years ago when I was living in Lubbock, Texas. And in Lubbock, because it is a college town, there were some nice restaurants there, but it wasn't really touristy. The restaurants didn't gobble up all of the allocation as soon as it hit the marketplace, like happens in most every other city in America. And so I put my name on every liquor store's list and said, look, if you guys get some allocated stuff, whether it's Rip or Pappy or, E.H. Taylor or, the George T. Stag, let me know. And inevitably, every single year, I got a call. Sometimes it was 1 bottle. Sometimes it was 2. And I always paid retail for it. So again, that 20 year cost me about $168. It's still sitting in my cellar to stay safe. And yeah, it's probably open market right now in the $4,000 to $6,000 range.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
but when you're in Lubbock, you're not just any Joe Schmo walking in off the street. You're in radio, so people knew who you were.
Well, I don't know that really had a whole hell of a lot to do with anything.
That didn't open doors.
It may have, but I never pulled that card.
Well, that's awfully cool of you, because it certainly could have worked to your advantage, I'm sure.
Perhaps. I do have a quick story. We were in a pizza parlor in Lubbock, and I noticed a bottle of Pappy 15 behind the bar. It was about a quarter of the way full. And I asked the bartender, I said, hey, I'm just curious, how much for a snifter is that Pappy over there? And she says, I don't know. It was a gift that our owner got a couple of years back. Our owner doesn't drink. She said, it's not even in our system here. She says, what do you think about $20 a snifter? Is that a good price? And I'm like, yeah, give me the rest of the bottle. How many snifters do you think are left in it? And we drank the rest of it. I think it cost me all of about $85 or $90 at the end of the day. But that was nice.
It's fun to have knowledge that other people don't, and you can exploit that for your own pocket well-being.
For sure.
How did you get into radio then?
As a young child, my brain was always working. I distinctly remember laying down in the back of my parents' car. I think we were driving to Houston to go to Astro World, rest in peace, way back in the day.
Oh yeah.
And I was so excited to go to Astro World, and I was always thinking about, what do I want to be when I grow up? And so in my mind, I came up with this plan of becoming a musician, a famous rock star, making millions of dollars, buying my own amusement park, and then buying my own radio station so that I could play my music on the radio, right?
Sure.
Fast forward, when it came time to graduate high school and get into college, I initially was going to go to the University of North Texas and study jazz up there professionally, and wanted to get my prerequisites taken care of on the community college level in San Antonio. And they had a pretty damn good radio, television, and film program there. And so that's what I jumped into to get an associate's in. It was radio, television, film / interpersonal communications. And I just excelled at the radio and TV side of things. I did better off camera as a producer in a television station, running the switcher, being the director of what was going on in front of the camera. This is back in the days of the VHS tape and the big old VHS recorders. So, some of your projects would be, making a mini movie or making a mini commercial or whatever. And I did that. And then being a musician, some of the music that I was playing at the time caught the ear of the lady Debbie Alcacer, who still works in Dallas as a prominent on-air announcer, on-air personality. Debbie did Texas Tracks and knew of my music, and I began an internship at the radio station. And so this is kind of a long story. They ended up flipping the radio station after 20 years of rockin' San Antonio and breaking bands. Like, you look back at documentaries on Rush and Judas Priest, and Geddy and those guys will say, hey, a lot of our success in the South started in San Antonio at this legendary rock station, Kiss FM.
When you say breaking bands, tell our audience what breaking a band means.
Yeah, well, back in the day, the program directors would, get 45s or LPs in the mail, and these two guys, Lou Roney and Joe Anthony, would get this product, and they were pretty fearless and adventuresome, and would jump onto something, back before everything was controlled by charts, and they heard something, they'd just start playing it on the radio. They'd play it a lot. Right. And then, Houston would take knowledge, or Dallas would take knowledge and go, hey, wow. Oh, my God. This little band Rush just played in San Antonio to a sold out crowd of 1,800 people. Something's going on here. And people would catch on. Back then, it was all very word of mouth. And there were pockets where these, new rock bands would start having success around the country. It wasn't like today. Something gets served up, and there's multi-million-dollar budgets with marketing and promo guys, and everyone's looking at charts and don't play it if it's not a top 20 or whatever. All this malarkey, and so when something takes off, they're hustling the ad game. How many stations have added the song to a playlist? And a lot of radio stations will go, well, we're not going to play it until it has so many ads or so many stations are already aboard. But back then it was a wild, wild west,
Yeah. How much does it cost to get a hit these days?
That's a great question. I'm probably not the greatest person to answer that. In the internet age, probably a lot less expensive than it used to be. Yeah. 15, 20 years ago. You don't need to sign away your life to the devil and do these crazy 360 deals anymore. If you're a kid with a studio, which, it's pretty inexpensive to build your own studio nowadays.
Well, you look at what Oliver did with Rich Men North of Richmond. I mean, that was
Sure.
all internet based.
Yeah. I mean, that's lightning in a bottle for sure. I think it still does. There's seed money coming from some place, and these promo guys, even if you're, an independent artist, there's somebody out there who is funding some of this stuff to get the promo people, the independent promo people, to talk about these indie bands to radio stations, and hopefully they get put on the radar somehow. So it definitely costs money. Occasionally, very, very rarely, something completely independent, a band will release a video, it'll go viral, and then the record company will jump on that based on how many Facebook likes they have, or how many TikTok followers they've got, or what type of content they're producing, or how many people are coming to their shows in a given region, or what have you, or if the product looks good or sounds good,
Well, there's a country artist that I'm very familiar with because we played him a lot in Houston, Texas, when he was an independent artist, Cody Johnson.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Cody built up his audience to such a degree that there was a bidding war between record labels to get him to sign.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't happen. Often,
very
if
rare,
at all.
Very, very rare. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when you got into radio, did you want to be on air, or did you want to be behind the scenes as a program director? Because you said in television you enjoyed being behind the scenes.
No, I totally wanted to be on air.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the station ended up flipping format. This is 1989. They flipped format overnight from this legendary rock station celebrating 20 years of rock in San Antonio to flipping to oldies, right?
Are you kidding me?
Yes, and the station went from number 1 or number 2 or number 3, 12 plus, which is an inside radio term. It's just like the large umbrella, right?
Yeah.
To like 17th in the marketplace, like that in a flash.
So how fast did they lose their jobs for doing that?
Well, the backstory, and this is unconfirmed, so forgive me if I screw up this backstory. But
it's mostly true. Then, if it's unconfirmed, it's definitely true.
Yeah, is a company called Adams Communications, who had their flagship big biller in the country was Cool Gold in Phoenix, Arizona, and Adams wanted to buy Magic 105.3, I think it was, in San Antonio, which was also an oldie station from the Rusk Corporation. A couple of guys out of Houston, KLOL, man,
Ken Anthony, he was one of my first bosses.
Yep. They wanted to buy this oldie station in San Antonio. The Rusk Corporation, small independent owners. They said, no, we're not going to sell it. We're making too much money off it. Go pound sand, whatever. And so Adams Communication, in their infinite wisdom, didn't have a sales staff, I guess, that could sell KISS for what it should have been valued for, and they ended up flipping for me. They said, if we can't buy them, we're going to try and beat them at their own game, and they got washed out. Well, fast forward a year and a half later, Rusk Corporation ends up buying KISS from Adams, and then putting it into a closet and bringing it back as a rock station. And I was the first guy to hit the button to switch from this Elvis Presley song to Party on the Patio from ZZ Top.
Nice.
We built this radio station artist by artist, song by song. The first, week, I think, it was nothing but ZZ Top. And then we added Led Zeppelin to the mix. So it was a ZZ Top song and a Led Zeppelin song. And that went on for about a day and a half. And then we added, AC/DC to the mix. And then we added Metallica to the mix. And we added this and that and the other. And that went on for the period of, 2 or 3 months. I was a board op behind the scene, working in 6-hour shifts of just pushing buttons back before the day of automation.
Yep.
And then the air staff started to get added. When they started adding some personalities, the program director, Virgil Thompson at the time, told all of us interns and part-timers, hey, I need to hire some weekend part-time talent. I think there were 6 or 7 of us that were in the RTF program at San Antonio College. He said, you guys, submit me an air check tape, do it over at KSYM, the public radio station. And I'll, I want to pick a person or a few to jump on the air. And I was the guy who got the golden ticket. And I did, overnights, Sunday midnight to Monday, or like Monday 00 hours to Monday at 0500 for a couple of weeks. And literally it took 3 or 4 weeks. I think my third air check session with Virgil, he just writes great on a piece of paper and goes, man, you're sounding awesome. And a week later, he's like, hey, the 7 to midnight guy is taking a vacation day. Can you jump in here on Saturday night, 7 to midnight on this legendary station? I'm like, oh my God, shaking in my boots. Well, there's more to that story. 30 minutes into my first real on-air shift, real on-air time, he pops his head in the door at 7:30 and goes, hey, by the way, are you familiar with Dave Mustaine and Megadeth? I'm like, oh, yeah, I love Megadeth. Well, Dave's down the hall. He flew in from Phoenix. This new record, Symphony of Destruction, is coming out. Will you interview him and play the new song? I said, yeah, sure, man. So, of course, I get all nervous again, and Dave Mustaine comes in, and we talk for 3.5 minutes. I play the new song. We talk for another 3.5, 4 minutes, and I jump into a commercial break. I thank him for coming in, right?
Yeah.
And he goes, what the hell, man? I traveled all the way from Phoenix, Arizona to come here and hang out on the radio station. You're going to give me all of 10 minutes? And I'm like, well, that's fine. We can hang out longer. I didn't, I was given no information on Dave Mustaine coming into the studio. He goes, well, let's take some phone calls. I'm like, okay. So I hit the first line on the phone and I say, hey, KISS Radio, what's going on? And the guy goes, hey, man, play some Metallica. And Dave reaches across the control board and goes, fuck you. Click. And hangs up on the guy. So things went south really quick.
I would imagine.
I said, hey, Dave, I'm going to use the restroom. I'll be right back. And I took off outside the control room, walked 2 doors down to my boss's office, said, hey, Dave just told the listener to fuck off and hung up on him. Just wanted to give you the heads up.
Yeah, I mean,
I
if you're
can-
not
I can
familiar with
rest-
the Dave Mustaine story, Dave was
Oh,
the guitar player for Metallica, had a
yes.
massive falling out with them. So and he goes out on his own with Megadeth. And if your first question you ask is play some Metallica, yeah, he's going to say fuck you. There's no question
Yeah,
about
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. And so
He's notoriously a tough interview, though, isn't he?
he is a notoriously tough interview. That was my first introduction to Dave. The next time I saw Dave, I think it was a year later. They were touring through San Antonio, and I said, "Hey, man, you de-virginized me. I was the first interview that I ever did was with you." And he's like, "Oh, great, you're a great virgin." And he was really cocky. And then 10 years later, we did a promotion in Reno where I was working at the time, and David agreed that he was trying to revitalize his career to come in and do a big dinner with a bunch of listeners. So we hung out for 2.5 hours. They ended up playing after the show, and he was great. We had a great time just hanging out, shooting the crap.
Isn't it funny how age mellows us?
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he still doesn't like Metallica, but he's mellowed a little bit more on the other side of
He
things.
certainly has. He certainly has.
You were mentioning AC/DC. You mentioned Metallica.
Yeah.
Before you came on, I was doing. I always do an introduction as to how I kind of equate to the guest that I'm having. And I knew that your music background. I knew that you worked with Metallica, and I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
But my formative music was Kiss, into AC/DC. Then AC/DC became Pantera, then became Guns N' Roses, then became Morbid Angel in Cannibal Corpse.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, I mean, our mutual friend John Lennox knows all about how deep I go with death metal. But it's funny how this band can lead to this band can lead to this band. So what was your progression in music as far as your personal taste?
Oh, as far as my personal taste, I discovered Kill 'Em All and Ride the Lightning at a pretty young age. Initially I was in the top 40. I used to love listening to Casey Kasem, the American Top 40, right?
Right.
And then in, about the age of 12 or 13, all of a sudden I recognized, Emotions. And then I also recognized, all these pop songs are really sappy and they make me sad. And my brothers at the time were listening to, Black Sabbath and Steve Miller Band and Led Zeppelin and all these great bands. So and Rush, and I got turned on to Rush Permanent Waves, and I'm like, man, this is the coolest thing ever. And I got turned on to early Zeppelin and stuff like that. And then the first time that I heard Metallica, Kill 'Em All and Ride the Lightning, I went, this is my music right here, And I got stuck onto that and really started identifying with that clique in high school, right? The headbangers.
Sure.
And I consider myself a bit geeky in middle school. I was not incredibly popular, when parachute pants were in. Man, I wanted to go out and get some parachute pants. When, beatboxing was in, I tried to learn how to beatbox. When people were breakdancing, I tried to learn how to breakdance. And I was sucked at all of it. And at the same time got ostracized from the only group that I really identified with, which is the metalheads. And I distinctly remember walking home from school one day and thinking, I'm not going to be like that. I'm not just going to be metal up your ass and metal till you die. I'm going to have a respect for all types of music. Why do I just want to zone myself up on this? So, I started to explore blues, B.B. King and Buddy Guy. And, growing up in San Antonio, Willie Nelson played at Floor Country Store on Sundays, right? He was right down the street.
Mm-hmm.
So really got a healthy respect for country music. I played in my first real professional band was called Éxito. We were the North American version of Menudo at the time, all white kids playing polkas, cumbias, lambadas. We won the 1992 or 1982 or 84, something like that, Battle of the Bands in San Antonio against all these metal bands. And our set list was Seek and Destroy, UB40 Red Wine, George Strait's The Chair, the Lambada song, because the Lambada movie had just come out, a polka, a cumbia, and an original rock song called Goldilocks. And Augie Myers and Freddie Fender were some of the judges.
Freddie Fender?
Yeah, of that competition. And we ended up getting top honors and getting a $2,500 recording voucher and got to go into a real recording studio and do a song. And our rehearsal space roommate was Selena Quintanilla. He had a
No
band
way.
Selena y los Dinos at the time. Yeah.
Selena.
Yeah. The legendary Selena.
Did you work for her?
I didn't work for her, but our paths crossed often because she was just a Tejano singer at the time. She was playing the bars and the nightclubs and the weddings and the debuts and, playing primarily cover songs and occasionally some of her own originals. She didn't really blow up until they put the pop music polish on what she did. And she became a solo artist as simply Selena and dropped the Y Los Dinos from her list.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I kind of deviated away from your initial question there. I got into Metallica and everything else it just started flooding in. But my passion, what I was most excited about was bands like Metallica, Fate's Warning, Slayer, Exodus, Morbid Angel, DRI, Fearless Iranians from Hell. Some of the hardcore punk metal stuff that was out at the time.
So then how cool was it you growing up liking and listening to Metallica, then you ended up working with them?
Yeah, that was quite a trip. I had a drummer in the second band that I was in. He was all the guys in the second band called Dina that I was in were all 5 or more years older than I was. And I was a competent and pretty damn good bass player because I played guitar in all my other bands and switched over to bass because they had a need for bass. And to find a competent, not addicted, good playing bassist is a lot easier than finding a guitar player who knows how to rip it up, I guess. And so my drummer worked with some of the local concert promoters in San Antonio, Stone City Attractions, Jam Productions, Pace Concerts, which became Live Nation.
Yeah.
Back in the day. And he said, hey, man, I can probably get you on the local crew to do, stagehand work, loading, unloading, stuff like that. And so I did that, and I was very, very competent at my job there. And I was so fascinated that, when they would cut the entire crew at 4 or 5 o'clock because the load-in was done, they would say, all right, you guys, load out starts at 10:30, be back here at 10:30. I would hang out and talk to the sound guy that I had been working with the entire afternoon hooking up his stuff, or the LD because I was helping, put and focus his lights on there. And so I developed some relationships with these guys, and eventually a sound guy said, hey, man, you're pretty good at what you do. We need somebody to run monitors for Bob Dylan. And that was the first real big tour that I actually went out and did more than just a local show in San Antonio with and ran monitors for Bob Dylan. And then the Metallica and Justice for All tour was out. They needed somebody who was going to be a production assistant / runner. And runner is somebody who has an all-access pass, knows the city very, very well, has reasonable transportation, and they don't have any baggage. So you're not going to get any drama from the runner. And so I just kind of springboarded all of that into this relationship. And I didn't do long touring with Metallica, but I did Austin, I did San Antonio, I did Dallas, and a couple of others that go around. Same thing with Queensryche, same thing with Tesla. I developed a relationship with a guy named Howard Underleger. And Howard did he was the LD for Iron Maiden and the Power Slave tour. He did Tesla's Mechanical Resonance. It was a doubleheader tour with Great White and Tesla. A brilliant stage show. He did Rush Moving Pictures. He did Queensryche and the Empire Tour, where they did. I think the first part of the set was Operation Mindcrime in its entirety, and then the last part of the set was songs from Empire and other stuff. I fondly remember hanging out in a Lazy Boy recliner at the lighting table, eating popcorn from an air popcorn machine in Austin, Texas, after we had set up that show with Howard Underleger, the LD. It was just a blast working with those guys.
When you said you ran monitors, what does that mean?
That means I'm the whipping boy behind the monitor station on the side wing of the stage. And when Bob says it needs to be louder, a little bit louder, or softer, a little bit softer, or there's too much 3K in it, turn down the treble, or there's too much mid-range, turn down the mid-range, there's not enough mid-range, turn up the mid-range. Every single song, Bob had something else to say, glaring at me and screaming while the audience is looking on. of change this, change that. That's just the life of a monitor tech, I think.
Wow. It's every song with Bob Dylan, huh?
He was pretty incessant. There's some guys who set it and forget it. I did a lot of shows with Clint Black. He was super solid to work with. Great band, great bunch of guys. Highway 101, another big country band. I used to play, the South Texas scene and that run all the time. Who were just really easygoing, pretty much set it and forget it. There were a couple of tweaks here and there throughout the show. And you have to be cognizant, when the guitar player is doing his solo, crank up his monitor a little bit, Yeah. If the singer is moving over to stage right, maybe put a little bit more of his vocals in stage right as he walks over there, and then turn him back down so the guitar player can hear himself as he walks back to the center. There's little intricacies like that go into being a monitor tech.
So when you're working with these bands, do you get to hang out with them? Do you get to know them?
A bit. Yeah, a little bit.
The Rolling Stones?
Rolling Stones, I was just a stagehand for that. That was a 3-day load in and a 2-day load out. It was the the new Voodoo U. Yeah. With like a big scorpion tail that came up. That one happened at the Alamo Dome. That was a great show. I worked as a stagehand and a runner for that one. So I didn't get to hang out with Mick or the guys on that. Occasionally you would see them in catering. However, those big guys like Rolling Stones, I worked with Rod Stewart. They would have their own catering company on the road with them. And I remember one catering company in particular called Eat Your Heart Out did both the Stones and Rod Stewart at the time. So it was like a gourmet chef that was out on the road with you. And as a runner, first thing in the morning at 9:30 or 10 a.m., they'd give you a grocery list and $500 cash and go grab all this stuff. Fancy bottles of wine, 16 loaves of fresh French bread and blah 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 blah. It was always funny, this long-haired 21-year-old kid roaming through the high-end grocery store getting organic this, that, and the other back in the late 80s, early 90s, and people looking at me like, who is this kid on a random Tuesday with $400 getting all this expensive food?
Speaking of $400 in organics, as a runner, do you have to know where you can get weed for the bands?
Some people would say yes. I was, and
you will assert your Fifth Amendment privilege.
Yeah, all I can tell you is that the country guys tended to party and ask more of the runners when it came to extracurricular activities than the rock guys. And there was one band I picked up from the airport, San Antonio International Airport, that on the drive to the venue said, "Hey, where can we score some cocaine?" I'm like, I don't have any idea, man.
So the country musicians were hardcore partiers.
Yeah. I worked with Kiss in the Hot in the Shade tour, and that was an interesting opportunity to meet Gene Simmons. I took his laundry back after the show. He was staying at La Mansión del Norte on the Riverwalk. And I come over and knock on the door. Shannon Tweed answers the door in negligee. Gene is on the bed on the phone wearing nothing but a bath towel. Puts the phone down to the side, looks at me and says, "Well, what do we have here?" And I said, "Gene, we have your laundry." And he looks over to Shannon, looks back to me, and says, "You want to stay a while?" And what flashes through my head is, oh my God, I can have a threesome with Gene and Shannon Tweed and never work another show in my life. My career is over.
Yep.
Or I can say, man, I got to get back to the venue. Thanks for the offer. I did the latter.
Good for you. But man, what a story, huh? What a predicament.
Uh-huh.
What are shows that you've worked? Are you able to watch that show? Or
Absolutely.
Are you just, what are the best shows you've ever seen?
When the show is happening, yeah, you've got an all-access pass. You can, roam around wherever. God, that's like asking a chef what the best food he's ever had is.
Yeah.
I have to say...
maybe it's not a show that you worked. Maybe it's...
Yeah. Trans-Siberian Orchestra, their light show, their stage show is really, really hard to beat. Going way back, over the span of about 2 months, I saw the Kiss Creatures of the Night tour. I saw Iron Maiden's Power Slave tour, and I saw Ronnie James Dio, The Last in Line. The best show of the three, hands down, easily was Ronnie James Dio. had some pyrotechnics and some laser beams and some cutting edge technology that I had never seen before in a show. And he was, Ronnie was just such an amazing frontman too. He made everybody in the audience think that he was singing and looking directly at them. Really cool stuff.
And I heard he was super nice.
Super, super nice guy. Yeah.
Yeah, like really
Ronnie
humble,
several
really
times over the years.
Yeah, the guy that I used to work with on the classic rock station in Houston, Texas, Scott Sparks, he said he's one of his all-time favorite musicians that he got to hang out with.
Yeah.
What do you miss about radio? Because you're not in it anymore. What do you miss?
Well, yeah, I'm not. I left Reno for family reasons back in March of 2023. Yeah, what I miss most is being surrounded by music all day. I have super bad tinnitus being a musician for a lot of years, and I've always had an aversion to earplugs. And so there's complete dead silence in my office all day long. And the ringing in my ears just goes louder and louder and louder and louder. So I miss being surrounded by music all day long with a radio or something playing. I miss that discovery of music. I do it as often as I can, just, surfing YouTube while I'm here at the house.
Do you miss the battles?
Battles as far as
the promo battles with the competition? Because they can get nasty, man.
Yeah, I always came out victorious on that. I can't tell you a single time that I was burned. But again, when I got into radio, I learned from Virgil Thompson and Kevin Vargas. Kevin's still in the game, running all the rock stations for Town Square Media. These guys were superb at what they did. And so I learned a lot about radio battles there. And man, do I have some stories I could share with you.
Well, I definitely want to hear them because I want to see if it stacks up to the worst one that I was ever a part of.
Okay. I'll give you two quick stories. One, we were presenting a Metallica show in Reno, and the competition got out there. They came in a limo, and the afternoon jock had all these strippers around him and thought he was, hot to trot. And they have all this banner on a roll, and they had the large banners, like foot tall or foot wide banners. And so they were putting up their banners on a roll everywhere on the outside of this arena. And my promotions director immediately starts freaking out. This is about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. No one was there aside from the radio station setting up, right? And she goes, "This is our show. I'm going to go tell them to tear it down." I said, No. Just wait. So I went and waited for them to go through probably 3 rolls at about $250 to $350 a roll. Of all this banner around the entire place. Let them set up their booth with their strippers and stuff, and let them get their egos pumped up before pulling out the paperwork showing that we had presents and showing it to the venue manager and escorting them off-site at about 4:30 right before people got off work and started to get to the venue, and they had to tear everything down. That was embarrassing for them. They were really upset about it. And then the other good one...
Did they try to enact revenge at a future show?
They did not.
Wow. Yeah, nope, you schooled them, brother.
Yeah, the other one was we had a Korn show at another arena, the Reno Event Center, and it was a sold-out show. And this particular show, I guess Korn was trying to evolve their sound a little bit, so they were playing nicey nice with the rock station and the alternative rock station in the marketplace. So the show was a neutral show. And I said, well, why is it neutral? I mean, I have championed this band since before day one. I have a copy of Clown, the lyrics that have the coffee cup stain on it that Jonathan gave me when when that song first took off. And they said, it's a neutral show. So I had the foresight to contact the city of Reno and bag all of the parking meters in the front of the venue, right? And we had an ambulance as a station vehicle, a van as a station vehicle, and a giant A-frame. And so I put up all 3 of our vehicles right in front of the venue, leaving no other place for anybody else to park. And these guys come out there and they're looking for a place to park. They're looking for a place to park. They're bitching at the promoter. They're bitching at the venue manager. The promoter and venue manager come to me and said, "Hey, you guys have got to move. This is a neutral show. You got to let them park here. And I pull out of my back pocket. No, these are public parking meters that I rented for the night, and show them the paperwork. And both the promoter and the venue manager smiled and got a kick out of it. And they went, "Oh my God, that was good. That's good.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And then these guys started spray painting with washable spray paint, their logo and stencil, on the sidewalk and on the concrete of the venue. And I pointed that out to the venue manager. The venue manager blew a gasket, kicked them off site, but not before he handed them a mop and a bucket and had the program director start washing it up. So as the program director is out there scrubbing the mop and the bucket, I send my promotions guy over there with a digital camera and just was photographing him like the paparazzi and laughing at him. Oh my God, was he embarrassed? And again, this all took place at about 5:30 before the big crowds had even gotten there. So most people didn't even see it. But man, that was a kick in the ass.
Man, you played clean. You didn't play dirty at all. You played clean.
No. I never sent dead chickens to a program director's house or a horse's head or anything like that. The guys in Minneapolis, I saw a radio battle there during the conclave that was just brutal. I mean, it can get really, really dirty, but I never shot that dirty of pool. Aside from sending a competitor a bunch of faxes from a foreign state when he first started at the station, and every fax, I sent him one a day for the first 35 days he was there. Every fax was, "Hey, blah, blah, blah." I'm not going to give you what his name is. "Hey, blah, blah, blah. The station sounds great. Just one thing." And then I would just pick it apart every single day, a new fax. But just one thing, and just pick it apart. And I know it got under his skin.
Well, sure.
And he probably assumed that it was from me, but the fact that it was coming from a different state, the fax number, back when everybody used faxes all the time, you could see where it was coming from. He was probably scratching his head like, what in the hell is this? And of course, this is long before streaming, right?
Oh, right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So the one that I was a part of happened in Denver, Colorado. We were KNRX and our competitor was KBPI. And after we were only on the air for 11 months before we got bought out by a Spanish speaking company. But in an 9-month time, we had cut into KBPI's ratings by 50%.
Yeah.
And so their program director, Bob Richards, had one of their interns go over to my program director's house on the morning of Thanksgiving and impale 3 turkeys in his front yard that said, "Enjoy this Thanksgiving. It's your last one in Denver."
Was that Brian Schock by chance?
Yeah. How do you know Schock?
Yeah. I know Schock very well. I've heard that story. And Brian had kids, like family there. That's a little much.
Yeah, well, Brian ended up taking him to court, taking BPI and Bob to court, and I was a character witness for Brian because I was over there that morning.
Yeah, Brian's a great guy. He's here in the Carolinas as well now.
He's an amazing friend. Yeah. I was this 7 to midnight guy at KNRX.
Okay, very.
You
cool.
talk about early. You're getting back to what you were talking about breaking a band. They did that. He and Malcolm, they did that a lot. Yeah. They didn't play the chart game at all.
Malcolm Riker was on our competition in San Antonio for a short spell before we forced them to switch format. And we would haze him in air check sessions. We would, our PD would play some of the competition. And I remember one break Malcolm did because their studios were literally like across the street and down an alley from the Alamo. And so it was always broadcasting from the front steps of the Alamo. And he was coming out of a song that was a new song from a band. And he said, I pulled up here to the station today. It's Malcolm Riker. And there was this hot-looking Corvette out front, and it left so fast it left skid marks. Here's new Skid Row. And you're like, oh, God, what a terrible break. I love Malcolm.
Yeah, it's Malsheesh, man. It's Malsheesh.
There you go. Good Malcolm.
Well, here's the thing. In radio especially, but I think it's probably in every business, it's such a small world, man, that, Brian, Malcolm. I worked for Brian. I worked with Malcolm.
Yeah.
Lennox. I know Lennox. I mean, it is really small when you think about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure, man.
Your list of people that you interviewed is so long, but the Slash conversation was really cool.
Thanks. Yeah, I screwed up an interview with Slash at Rock on the Range once. And when I say I screwed it up, we had a great conversation. The first 5.5 minutes of the interview were incredible. And then I asked him toward the end of the interview, I said, okay, I said, I know you get, hot and sweaty on stage. You have to have more than one top hat. Where do you keep all your top hats and how many do you have? And Slash looked at me and he gave me a look of disdain and said, man, this conversation was so good up until that question. I went, oh, I felt like an ass for asking him that.
Did he answer it though?
No, he didn't answer it.
He didn't even answer it.
No, The interview was pretty much done at that point in time. It became awkward.
We talked about Mustaine earlier, but who was the most difficult interview you ever had?
David Lee Roth.
Why?
Yeah, without a doubt. David Lee Roth, he's so hokey and always all these terrible one-liners and always trying to be the everything David Lee Roth says, he's got a joke and a smile at the end, and a little shaka, and it was just awkward because you don't see the smile when you're talking to somebody over the phone. There's not the mannerisms. He wasn't able to.
It doesn't translate.
It didn't translate, and I wanted to get kind of into the nitty gritty. I come into an interview extremely well researched,
mm-hmm.
and I think he was just he was just looking for a platform. I get it, but I had to go into a commercial break, and he ended up hanging up on me.
Wow. So,
yeah, because I wasn't laughing at his jokes. I was just like, whatever.
Was this with you when he was with Van Halen, or was this solo?
No, this was solo. I was working in Iowa at the time. Yeah.
So who's somebody that you always had a great conversation with and would talk to him in a heartbeat?
There's so many. There's quite a few. I mean, as of late, let's see, James LaBrie from Dream Theater. James and I are on speed dial, and he is a fairly reclusive individual. I know he's not the biggest front man or rock star on the face of the planet, but man, he's an intellectual. I love talking to him about stuff. Yeah, there's a ton. I hung out with Lars Ulrich once at his house. We had dinner at his place in Marin, and there was a whole slew of people. But Lars and I got along so well that, and there were shuttle buses taking people back to their hotels back in San Francisco in the city. And they were going in shifts starting at about 11:30 or midnight. And finally, 2:30 in the morning, Lars and I, he's going, hey, let's check out this, this old UFO concert that I have on DVD or VHS in the theater down here. And I'm like, yeah, and you got this, and you got this. And he's like, yeah, check this one. Have you seen this one? And his handlers finally had to come and grab me and go, hey, Lars, it's going to be 3:00 in the morning. We're not, this is the last train into town. And Lars like, oh, sorry, man, I guess you got to split. And so, but, every time I've talked to Lars or any of the guys in Metallica, it's just been a great conversation. So easy to get along with.
Isn't that cool when they can let their guard down and you see them not as rock stars or musicians, but just as people?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's when you've done a great job in a conversation or that you've made a real impression on somebody was when they do that.
Yeah, it's all, to me, it's all about the research, man.
Yeah.
Same thing with Don Felder. I got a chance to interview him when he did a solo show in Reno several years back, and I was working on the classic rock station doing mornings. We had such a great conversation that after the interview, he stayed on the phone and said, man, that was one of the best interviews I've had. He ended up inviting us backstage for, the after the meet and greet hookup and chat, and we hung out with Felder for an hour after that with his wife and his kids were there and just hung out and shot the shit, man. It was great.
That is the highest compliment you can give somebody who's asking questions that's the best interview I've ever had.
Yeah I've had some nice ones.
That's really cool.
I don't know if you heard the Cyndi Lauper interview that I did. It was Cyndi and Rod Stewart on a combo. They were out doing the tour together.
Uh-huh.
And Rod is dropping his kids off at soccer practice in the morning. But that was a great conversation. And I asked Cyndi if there was any sexual tension between the two of them because she's such a hottie and Rod was known for, his flashy dressing.
Rod the bod.
Yeah, being a good-looking guy. And Cindy's response was, "Oh God, no! He always wears such ridiculous stuff. I always have to tell him you can't wear that on stage." In 3 octave higher Cyndi Lauper voice, of course.
Of course.
But yeah, funny interview.
The interview that got away. One person that you wish you could interview that you never have.
Wow. I mean, if it was not genre specific,
no, it doesn't have to be.
I think it would be fascinating to speak to Taylor Swift. I think it'd be fascinating to speak with John Mayer. I have a lot of respect for both those artists, especially Taylor, because she writes all of her own material, or at least most of it. Mm-hmm. She's a savant. She's brilliant. Madonna has kind of gone off the cuckoo deep end, but I bet she's got some great stories. Obviously, the King, Michael Jackson. I don't know if I could take his voice for an entire interview, but I'm sure he would just be a fascinating person to kind of dig deep into a little bit, and get beneath the psyche.
How do you define a great interview?
Somebody who has really thoughtful answers and also knows when to shut up. Awkward silence.
No, I was learning how to shut up. I Larry King was the guy that.
Oh yeah.
I kind of modeled my conversation style after, and he said if you go into an interview with 3 questions and you have to use 2, you're not listening.
That's true.
Yeah, so
I always went in with 10 to 15 questions, and if I used more than 4 or 5 of them, it was the interview was either really, really good, or the conversation was dynamite.
Yeah, and it's just you can't, for people that have not done it before, you really can't describe how a cool and effortless conversation is.
For sure.
So, what will you be enjoying this evening after we converse?
Probably tequila.
You are a big tequila fan. I saw that on Two Dudes Review.
Yeah. I've got a couple of videos up there comparing the Costco Añejo in the round tall bottle. It's 1 liter, and it was priced at $19 a bottle like 3 years ago. I think it's about $29 a bottle now. I've done A/B taste tests with that tequila up against Don Julio 1942, and you almost can't tell the difference. The Don Julio's a little smoother, a little sweeter, but it's $80 more a bottle, right? Yeah. So, that Costco tequila is incredible. It's my go-to sipper when I'm not looking for, something.
Are you a Blanco, Reposado, or Añejo guy?
Añejo, yeah. If I'm making margaritas, it's a Blanco.
Mm-hmm. What, have you had Código?
In fact, I think I have a bottle of that in my collection here. Yeah.
It's really good. It's really good. Yeah. Did you ever meet him when you were in San Antonio?
George Strait?
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually did the George Strait concert festival. It was like 6 or 7 bands. The promoter was either Jam or Pace at the time. Sold out the Alamo Dome at about 75,000 people, and it was for his birthday. And I was responsible for delivering his birthday present, which was a Jurassic Park pinball machine in his dressing room.
Cool.
And, George was super cool. George lived in the Dominion, which was about 15, 20 minutes away from where I grew up in San Antonio, right up off of 35 or I-10.
You talk about people that have had immense success. He's obviously the standard bearer for country music. I've never met anybody more humble.
For sure. Yeah, my guitar instructor growing up, his brother, his name is Bobby Jarzombek, is George's drummer in his band. If you want, I don't know if you're a fan of amazing drummers, but
I am.
If you get a second, look up Bobby Jarzombek.
Okay.
He's incredible. And his brother, Ronnie Jarzombek, is just as crazy on guitar as Bobby is on drums. It's strange to see. They're both hardcore prog rock players. Like they would make Portnoy blush.
Really?
As far as drum technique and style and accuracy and prog worthiness. But check those guys out.
How would you compare them to Danny Carey? Cool.
Wow. Comparable, a little bit of a different style. Danny, I don't think is quite as percussive and it, goes quite off the beat as much. Like anti-syncopation and the beat within the beat within the beat.
Mm-hmm. They're talking about Portnoy and Danny being two of the 5 names bantered about for a Rush tour.
Oh, that totally makes sense. Absolutely.
Yeah. They're saying that people that are current drummers that would be able to capture Neil Peart's essence, and those are 2 of the 5 names. I can't remember the other ones.
I love Portnoy. There's just the one critique I would give Portnoy is occasionally he overplayed.
How so?
Too many fills, too often.
And he's from Dream Theater.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Dream Theater and then Avenged Sevenfold for a short spell, and then he just replaced Mike Mangini, who took his spot in Dream Theater. This happened a month or so ago. Mangini was the drummer for Extreme.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and a great drummer too.
Nino Betancourt was from Extreme, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, guitar player.
Yeah, great guitar player. Who'd you model you're playing after?
Oh, I don't consider myself a great guitarist. I like Kurt Hammett.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. I was shocked to learn, pretty early on in my music playing, how much blues was involved in Kurt's style and playing and his theory and his philosophy, which you can hear in the later albums. I didn't hear much in the blues arena in Kill 'Em All and Ride the Lightning and, Master of Puppets.
Well,
you can definitely hear it Reload and to Current.
Isn't all rock derivative of blues?
It is. However, real solid blues riffs. There's a distinct difference, I think, if you listen to the solos. And granted, Hetfield had a lot to do with that too. But if you listen to the solos from Ride the Lightning and listen to the solo work on Load or Reload, to me, there's a lot of difference there.
Something for me to listen to now, because I never even thought that you could hear anything but rock out of those guys. So I will definitely be checking that out. Well, brother, man, it has been a great time conversing with you. And
likewise. I would cheers you, but I'm just cheering water. I got fillets to make upstairs. The wife's giving me the evil glare right now.
My thanks to Jave Patterson for joining me, and my deep gratitude to you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe and leave a rating and review. Doing so may very well lead to your comment being mentioned in a future episode. Please share the Fuzzy Mic with your friends. As our Fuzzy following grows, the more indebted I am to you. And to stay connected with the Fuzzy Mic, you can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. For video, mentioned it before, please subscribe to the Fuzzy Mic YouTube channel. The Fuzzy Mic is hosted and produced by Kevin Klein. Production elements by Zach Sheesh at The Radio Farm. Social media director is Trish Klein. Join me next Tuesday for a new episode of the Fuzzy Mic. And thank you.
That's it for the Fuzzy Mic. Thank you. The Fuzzy Mic with Kevin Klein. Fuzzy Mic.